This is just a quick video of the engine run I did on my airplane. This is actually the second time I've run this engine, so it has started and run previously in this airplane. But I just pulled it out of the hangar because I wanted to run it and make some adjustments in a dynon. Now when you turn the master switch on, the UL Power ECU will run the fuel pump. And you can hear that in the background. But it runs it for a few seconds to pump fuel up into the engine. I didn't run it long enough actually to pump fuel from the red container up through the blue tube and up into the engine. So the first time I turn over the prop, it doesn't start because there's no fuel. You'll notice the fuel pump is running right now, pumping more fuel to the engine. What I'm doing here is I got out because I wanted to see if that blue fuel tube is actually down into the fuel in this that red container. Here I'm letting the fuel pump run a little bit longer to suck up some more fuel. It got a little bit and it started, but not quite enough fuel. So the lesson learned with this engine start was that I need to run the pumps long enough to actually suck up the fuel from the red container. That's why it took a couple times to start. If I would have let the fuel pumps run longer and got the fuel from the red container up into the engine, it would have started right away. I have two little issues I need to work out. One is that at low RPM, like at idle, the engine runs pretty rough, and I'm not sure why. The other issue I have is when I switch between the left and right mags, there's zero drop in RPM. And I don't know if that's normal for this engine. I would still think even with a FADEC controlled engine there would be an RPM drop. I do know that both ignition coils are working because when I started this engine the first time a few months ago, I followed the UL Power recommendation of starting the engine on only one ignition module, so one of them was disconnected. You start the engine and make sure it runs, and then you plug in the other ignition module, disconnect the one that you ran on the first time, and you start the engine again on that ignition module. And then if it all works well, then you plug them both in and you start the engine on both. So I followed that procedure, so I know that both ignition modules are working, but I don't know if maybe my key switch is not switching between the left and right ignition. So what I need to do is start this engine again, probably for the third time, and I will disconnect one of the ignitions and then start the engine. So if I'm running on the, let's say the right ignition, and I switch to left, the engine should quit. If it doesn't quit, then that means the ignition key isn't working correctly. So the engine runs great. Like I said, it's a little rough at idle. I don't know if that's maybe because it's a new engine or what. I'll have to talk to UL Power, but I'm happy with it. It's very quiet. Once you get the power up into the mid-range, it's really smooth. The rest of this video is just the engine running and me playing with the various throttle positions and looking at the EFIS screen. So this is just a raw footage of the second engine run. I was going to make a whole video on how I set up the fuel can and tied the airplane down and all that stuff, but I never got around to it. This video is actually, I don't know, 2 or 3 months old now. I started this a couple months ago. So anyway, I just thought I have this footage, so I thought I'd put it out on the video so you can see the UL Power engine running in my Zenith Cruzer.